I'm ending your role today. The words hit before I even realized Brandon Myers was talking to me. My VP didn't lower his voice. Didn't pull me aside. Didn't check if anyone else could hear. We were standing in the hallway outside the break room. 3 people froze mid-conversation. Someone behind me stopped typing. The sudden silence felt heavy, like everyone was holding their breath at once. My pulse roared in my ears. I barely heard the rest of his speech. Something about restructuring. Something about the company moving in a new direction. Something about wishing me well in my future endeavors. His smile looked practiced. Too smooth. Too comfortable. My mouth went dry. My hands stayed perfectly still at my sides, even though something hot and angry was climbing up my chest. I knew exactly what month it was. I knew exactly what was coming in 3 weeks. And standing there, watching his rehearsed expression, I understood what he'd just done. This wasn't about my performance. This wasn't about budget cuts or department restructuring. This was about timing. This was about money he didn't want to pay me. My year-end bonus. The one I'd earned. The one he was stealing. Nobody moved to help me. Nobody spoke up. Nobody said this seemed wrong or asked questions. I slid away from mine like they were afraid just looking at me might be dangerous. Like whatever had just happened to me might spread to them if they got too close. I felt my face burning as I turned and walked back to my desk. Every sound felt too loud. The click of my keyboard when I closed my laptop. The scrape of my chair when I pushed it back. The zip of my bag when I packed up my things. My hands moved automatically, grabbing my water bottle, my notebook, the small plant someone had given me last year for my birthday. Brandon walked away first. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, confident and steady. He didn't look back. Didn't check if I was okay. Didn't even pause. I could feel everyone watching me from the corners of their eyes. Pretending to work. Pretending they hadn't just witnessed something cruel. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I finished packing in silence and walked toward the elevator with my head up. That walk to the elevator felt like it took forever. Every step echoed. Every breath felt shaky. But I kept moving, kept my shoulders straight, kept my face neutral. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. In my head, one thought kept repeating. One thought louder than everything else. This was the moment my entire year collapsed. All those late nights. All those weekend emails. All those times I'd saved projects from disaster while he took credit in meetings. None of it mattered now. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. The moment they closed, shutting out the office and all those watching eyes, my knees felt weak. I leaned against the wall and stared at my reflection in the polished metal doors. That was when the title of my story appeared in my mind, clear and sharp. My VP fired me before year-end bonuses. I filed one appeal that froze executive payouts. I didn't know the second part yet. I just knew something had been stolen from me, deliberately and publicly. And I wasn't going to pretend it hadn't happened. My name is Abigail Price. Until 5 minutes ago, I'd been employed, praised, and quietly essential to everything Brandon claimed as his own success. I was 32 years old. I'd worked at TechFlow Solutions for 4 years. I'd built the customer retention system from scratch. I trained half the team. I'd fixed problems nobody else could solve. I wasn't perfect. I wasn't some genius. But I was good at my job and everyone knew it. Including Brandon. 3 months ago, during our quarterly review, he'd leaned back in his chair and said I was in a really strong position for year-end. He'd smiled when he said it. Made it sound like a promise, like something I could count on. I'd worked harder after that conversation, stayed later, took on extra projects, built things that made him look good in front of his boss. Now, standing in this elevator, I understood what that promise had actually meant. He'd been planning this for months, waiting until he'd squeezed every last bit of work out of me, waiting until right before bonuses were announced. Timing it perfectly so he wouldn't have to pay me what I'd earned. The elevator reached the ground floor. The doors opened and I walked out into the lobby, then through the front doors into cold November air. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, still moving on autopilot. Calendar reminder lit up the screen. Bonus review period begins in 21 days. I laughed. One sharp, broken sound that I couldn't hold back. 21 days. 3 weeks. He couldn't even wait 3 more weeks. He had to cut me loose now, making absolutely sure I wouldn't be employed when those bonuses were calculated and distributed. The math was simple. Brutal but simple. Year-end bonuses at TechFlow were based on employment status on December 15th. If you weren't actively employed on that date, you got nothing. Didn't matter how much you'd contributed. Didn't matter how many hours you'd worked. Company policy was clear. I kept walking until I reached my car in the parking garage. I climbed inside and sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the concrete wall in front of me. My hands were shaking now. Not from fear. From rage. This wasn't an accident. This was theft dressed up as business. I sat there for 20 minutes, maybe longer. I wasn't crying. I wasn't screaming. I was doing math. Calculating rent, healthcare, car payment, the vacation I'd planned with my sister for January. The promises I'd made to myself about finally having enough saved up to feel secure. All of it depended on that bonus. All of it assumed I'd still be employed 3 weeks from now. Brandon knew that. He'd seen my budget spreadsheets during our financial planning workshop last spring. He knew exactly what firing me right now would cost me. This wasn't about performance. My last 3 reviews had been excellent. My projects were all on track. My team loved me. I'd never had a single written warning. This was about timing. About saving money. About pushing me out before he had to pay what I'd earned. And doing it publicly, in front of everyone, to make sure nobody would question it. To make it look like my fault somehow. Like I'd done something wrong. But I hadn't. And somewhere deep in my chest, beneath the shock and anger, something cold and clear was forming. A decision. Plan. Not revenge. Just the truth. I drove home on autopilot, barely seeing the road. My mind kept circling back through the last 6 months, replaying every conversation with Brandon, every promise, every lie wrapped up in praise. 3 months ago. You're in a really strong position this year, Abigail. I'm putting you forward for the highest bonus tier. 6 months ago. An email at midnight after I'd fixed a major client crisis. Couldn't do this without you. Seriously. You saved us. 8 months ago. I'm building my leadership team around people like you. People I can trust. Every late night stayed late to finish his presentations. Every weekend spent debugging code nobody else understood. Every crisis I'd quietly solved while he was out playing golf with executives. I saw all of it now, lined up behind his smile this afternoon. Every word had been strategy. Every compliment had been manipulation. He'd been using me. Running me into the ground, squeezing out every ounce of work he could get, and then cutting me loose the moment it cost him money to keep me. I parked outside my apartment and sat there in the darkness, engine off, hands still on the wheel. By the next morning my company email was gone. I tried logging in at 7:30, same as always, and got an error message. Count disabled. I tried Slack. Same thing. Deactivated. No exit interview had been scheduled. No HR follow-up call. No transition plan. Nothing. Just silence. Absence. Like I'd never existed. I called the main office line and asked for HR. The receptionist put me on hold for 6 minutes, then came back sounding uncomfortable. I'm being told someone will reach out to you within 48 hours regarding off-boarding procedures. Someone. Not a name. Not a person. Just someone. I hung up and stared at my laptop. 4 years of work. 4 years of building relationships, solving problems, making things better. Erased overnight. No goodbye email to my team. No chance to transition my projects. No acknowledgement that I'd ever contributed anything. That hurt worse than the firing itself. The casual cruelty of it. The message it sent. You don't matter. You never mattered. You were useful, and now you're not, so you're nothing. I sat there in my apartment in my pajamas, feeling completely untethered, unemployed, unmoored, invisible. Then I opened my laptop and started searching. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for answers. Looking for something that made sense of what had just happened. Some policy or procedure that explained how this could be legal. How it could be allowed. I found TechFlow's employee handbook buried in an old email folder. I downloaded it years ago during onboarding and never looked at it again. Now I read every page. Every boring paragraph about vacation time and dress codes and expense reports. Near the back, in a section called Compensation Governance, I found something. One paragraph, written in dry legal language that probably assumed nobody would ever read it carefully. Any termination disputes involving compensation timing or bonus eligibility may be subject to internal review. Such disputes trigger an automatic governance review process during which all related compensation payouts may be paused pending resolution. I read it 3 times. Then I read it again. All related payouts. Pending resolution. My heart started beating faster. This wasn't just about my bonus. This was about everyone's bonuses. If I filed a dispute about my termination timing, it would freeze all executive compensation until the review was complete. I sat back, staring at the screen, understanding clicking into place. I stared at that paragraph for a long time. Maybe 30 minutes. Maybe an hour. The words blurred and refocused. I read them forward and backward. Checked if there were exceptions or loopholes. There weren't. The policy was clear. Any dispute about compensation timing required review. During review, related payouts were frozen. Related meant anyone whose compensation was tied to the same review period. Which meant everyone at director level and above. Which meant Brandon. My finger hovered over the link to submit an internal dispute. 1 click. That's all it would take. 1 form. 1 official complaint. And everything would stop. Not just my situation. Everything. I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm. Very, very calm. The kind of calm that comes when you finally understand exactly what happened and exactly what you can do about it. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about hurting anyone. This was about telling the truth and letting the system respond the way it was designed to respond. Brandon had made a choice. He'd chosen to fire me 3 weeks before bonuses. He'd chosen to do it publicly. He'd chosen to cut off my access immediately, without dignity or explanation. Now I had a choice too. I opened the dispute form and started typing. No emotion. No accusations. Just facts. Documentation. Performance reviews attached as evidence. Emails showing the promises Brandon had made. Calendar entries showing the timing. Numbers showing my contributions to projects he'd claimed credit for. I wrote everything in plain language. I didn't call him names. I didn't say he was malicious or cruel. I just stated what had happened and when. I pointed out that my termination occurred exactly 21 days before the bonus eligibility date. I noted that no performance issues had been documented prior to termination. I included his own emails praising my work. The form asked if I was requesting financial remedy. I checked yes and specified the bonus amount I would have received based on standard calculation methods. The last question asked if I understood that filing this dispute would initiate a formal review process. Checked yes. Then I reviewed everything one more time. Made sure every date was accurate. Every attachment was correct. Every statement was factual and verifiable. When I was certain everything was perfect, I moved my cursor to the submit button. My hand was steady. My breathing was even. Click submit. Nothing exploded. No alarms went off. Just a loading screen, then a confirmation page. The confirmation email arrived 10 minutes later. Automated. Professional. Cold. Your dispute has been received and logged under case number 2847 ABP. A compensation governance review has been initiated per company policy section 7.4. All compensation payouts related to the review period in question have been paused pending completion of investigation and resolution. You will be contacted within 5 business days regarding next steps. Thank you. I read that email 5 times. All compensation payouts. Related to the review period in question. The review period was annual bonuses, which meant everyone's bonuses. Every executive, every director, every VP, including Brandon. I sat back in my chair, laptop open in front of me, confirmation email glowing on the screen. My coffee had gone cold beside me. I'd been sitting here for hours reading policies and filling out forms, and now it was done. Submitted. Official. Recorded in the system. Felt strange. Not triumphant. Not scared. Just very aware that I'd just changed something. That I'd set something in motion that couldn't be stopped now. The machine was turning. The process was started. And all I had to do was wait. Somewhere across town, in offices I couldn't access anymore, systems were updating. Flags were being raised. Notifications were being sent. That afternoon my phone buzzed. A text from Tyler, a developer I'd worked with on the retention system. We'd become friends over late-night debugging sessions and shared frustration with Brandon's leadership style. Hey! Weird question. Did you submit something? People are freaking out. My stomach dropped. I stared at his message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I hadn't expected word to spread this fast. The confirmation email had said 5 business days. Had been 4 hours. Typed back carefully. What do you mean? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. HR just sent an emergency email to all directors and above. Something about compensation review procedures. Nobody's saying why, but Brandon looks like he swallowed glass. Did you file something? Hesitated. Then typed. I filed an internal dispute about my termination. That's all. Just following company policy. Holy shit. His response came immediately. Everyone's bonus just got frozen. They're losing their minds. I set my phone down. My hands were shaking now. Not from fear. From something else. From realizing that what I'd thought would be a quiet, slow process had just become very loud, very fast. From understanding that my one small act of honesty had just become everyone's problem. Over the next few days, I watched from the outside as tech flow imploded from the inside. Tyler kept me updated. So did a few other people who still had my personal number. People I'd helped over the years. People who knew what Brandon had done was wrong. Brandon had stopped responding to questions about bonuses. Anytime someone brought it up in meetings, he changed the subject. We'll have clarity soon, he kept saying. Just a temporary procedural thing. But his voice sounded strained. His confidence was cracking. Meetings started getting postponed. Agendas kept changing. The all-hands that was supposed to happen on Friday got pushed to Monday, then pushed again to TBD. Words like later and soon and we're working on it replaced actual answers. Nobody said my name. But everyone knew. Somehow, everyone knew that Brandon's firing of me 3 weeks before bonuses had triggered something. That the timing wasn't random. That somebody had noticed. That somebody had filed paperwork that made the whole thing stop. I spent those days at home applying for jobs, trying to pretend my life was normal. But every few hours I'd get a text. Another update. Another crack appearing in Brandon's carefully constructed authority. The building was shaking. And I hadn't even been inside when I'd pulled the foundation out. On day 4 HR finally reached out. Not Brandon. Not his boss. Or a woman named Patricia Vance, senior compensation analyst. Her email was professional but careful. Every word chosen deliberately, like she was stepping around broken glass. Ms. Price, thank you for filing your dispute. We are treating this matter with appropriate seriousness. We will need documentation from you to complete our review. Specifically, we require copies of all performance reviews from your employment period, email correspondence related to compensation discussions, and project records showing your contributions during the annual review period. I already had everything ready. I'd spent 2 days organizing files into clean folders. Performance reviews showing Exceeds expectations. For 3 years straight. Emails from Brandon praising my work and promising strong bonus considerations. Project documentation showing my role in initiatives he'd presented to leadership as his own achievements. I sent everything within an hour. Professional. Thorough. Organized. The kind of documentation that didn't need explanation because it explained itself. Patricia responded 30 minutes later. Received. Thank you for your prompt cooperation. Please be aware that a formal review committee has been convened. You will be contacted when we have questions or updates. Committee. Formal. Multiple people. This wasn't just HR checking a box anymore. This was real. I learned more about the committee from Tyler. He'd overheard conversations near the executive offices. Apparently, 3 people from corporate governance had been pulled in, plus someone from legal, plus the CFO. 5 people total reviewing everything. Not just my case. Everything around it. They're looking at patterns, Tyler told me during a phone call. His voice was low, like he was worried about being overheard even though he was home. They pulled termination records for the whole year. They're checking if other people got let go right before bonuses. They're asking questions about timing. My chest tightened. How many others? I don't know exact numbers. But people are talking. Someone in finance got cut in October. Someone in marketing in September. Always within a month of bonus eligibility dates. This wasn't just about me anymore. This wasn't just Brandon trying to save money on my bonus. This was a pattern. Strategy. A deliberate system of pushing people out right before they got paid for their work. And my one dispute, my one honest filing, had exposed all of it. I sat on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, understanding spreading through me like cold water. I hadn't just filed a complaint. I'd opened an investigation. I'd pulled one thread, and the whole thing was unraveling. Over the following week, the question spread through TechFlow like a virus nobody could contain. It started in whispers near coffee machines and grew into open conversations in team meetings. Why were so many people terminated right before bonus payouts? Was it coincidence? Or was it policy? Nobody had asked before because nobody had connected the dots. Everyone saw their own situation as isolated, personal. But when my dispute triggered a company-wide freeze, suddenly everyone started comparing notes, sharing stories, realizing they weren't alone. Tyler forwarded me an internal thread from a private Slack channel. Engineers discussing the pattern, naming names, counting months. One person had created a spreadsheet tracking terminations over 3 years against bonus payment schedules. The correlation was undeniable. Looks like 23% of all terminations happened within 30 days of bonus eligibility, someone had written. That's statistically impossible to be random. Another person replied. Maybe that's why executive bonuses kept going up while headcount stayed flat. They saved money by cutting people who'd earned payouts. The thread had over 200 comments before someone from leadership noticed and shut it down. But the damage was done. Question was out. And questions like that don't disappear just because you delete the channel where they were asked. People wanted answers. And my dispute had made those answers mandatory. The executive floor became a war zone. Tyler said you could feel the tension radiating through the ceiling. Meetings behind closed doors. Raised voices bleeding through walls. People who normally smiled and made small talk now walked past each other without speaking. Brandon stopped coming to the office regularly. He worked from home most days, available only by email, responding slowly and vaguely. His boss, the senior VP of operations, started attending meetings Brandon used to run. Nobody explained why. Nobody had to. The panic was spreading. Other VPs were realizing that if the committee found problems with Brandon's termination decisions, they'd look at everyone's decisions. Everyone who'd pushed people out before bonuses. Everyone who'd saved money on payroll by timing exits strategically. Money made people nervous. The possibility of losing money made them terrified. And right now, every executive's bonus was frozen. Waiting. while investigators picked through records and asked uncomfortable questions. I got a call from Patricia Vance again. Ms. Price, the committee would like to schedule a formal interview with you. Are you available next Tuesday at 2 o'clock? Yes, I said. My voice was steady. I'll be there. This will be recorded. You may bring legal representation if you choose. I don't need a lawyer, I replied. I'm just telling the truth. The stories Brandon told about me started circulating. I heard them third-hand through friends who still worked there. Apparently I was confused, emotional, difficult to work with, not a cultural fit. My performance had been declining, and he'd made a tough but necessary decision. None of that matched the paper trail. And Brandon didn't seem to understand that paper doesn't care about charm. Documents don't believe stories. They just exist, factual and undeniable. My performance reviews were excellent. My project records showed consistent delivery. My emails from him were full of praise. His own words contradicted everything he was saying about me now. And the committee had access to all of it. Tyler sent me a screenshot of an email Brandon had sent to department heads. I want to be clear that Ms. Price's termination was performance-based and followed all standard procedures. Any suggestion otherwise is misinformed. I read it twice. Performance-based. Except there was no documentation of performance issues. No improvement plan. No warnings. Nothing in any system that supported his claim. Just a firing 3 weeks before bonuses. Public. Sudden. Permanent. The committee would see what I saw. The timing wasn't random. The lack of documentation wasn't an oversight. This was intentional. And calling me confused didn't change the facts. The announcement came on a Friday afternoon. Company-wide email from the CFO. Brief. Professional. Devastating. Due to an ongoing compensation governance review, all year-end bonus payments will be delayed until further notice. We expect to have resolution within 30 days. We appreciate your patience during this process. No explanation. No details. Just delay. The one thing nobody wanted to hear. The office erupted. People who'd been planning vacations around those bonuses suddenly couldn't book flights. People who'd been counting on that money for rent or car payments or holiday gifts were left hanging. And everyone knew why. Everyone knew it was because of me. Because of my dispute. Because I'd filed one honest report about what happened, and it had frozen everything. Some people were angry at me. I heard about it through messages. She screwed us all over. She's just bitter. Why couldn't she just move on? But more people were angry at Brandon. At the executives. At a system that had apparently been pushing people out before paying them systematically for years. At leadership that had let it happen. My dispute hadn't created the problem. It had just made everyone look at it. Brandon's authority dissolved like sugar in water. Slowly at first, then all at once. People stopped asking for his approval. Started routing decisions around him. His boss took over his meetings. His projects got reassigned. His name disappeared from email chains and strategy documents. Nobody said he was being pushed out. Nobody announced anything. But everyone could see it happening. The same way they'd seen me get erased. The same casual cruelty, the same invisible removal. Except this time it was happening to the person who'd done it to others. Tyler called me one evening. He tried to run the product planning meeting today. Stood up to present his slides. His boss interrupted him halfway through and said they were taking the conversation offline. Brandon just stood there for like 10 seconds then sat down. It was brutal. I didn't feel triumphant. Felt sad. Sad that this was how things worked. That power was just who could humiliate who. That leadership meant crushing people publicly and getting away with it until suddenly you couldn't anymore. Has he tried to contact you? Tyler asked. No. He hasn't said a word to me since he fired me. Yeah, that tracks. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Tyler said quietly, "You did the right thing, you know. Filing that dispute. A lot of us are glad somebody finally said something." While tech flow burned, my phone started ringing. Recruiters. Lots of them. My LinkedIn profile had been updated the day after I was fired, marked as open to work. Word had spread in the industry about what happened. Not the details, just enough. Enough to make me interesting. One recruiter called from a competing firm. "We've been watching the situation at TechFlow. We're looking for someone who understands customer retention systems and isn't afraid to stand up for themselves. Would you be interested in talking?" Another call came from a startup. "We need strong leadership. People with integrity. Your name keeps coming up in our network. Can we buy you coffee?" I took the meetings. I was professional and prepared. I didn't badmouth TechFlow or Brandon. I just explained what I'd built, what I was good at, and what kind of environment I was looking for. Respectful. Transparent. Fair. My reputation hadn't disappeared when my badge got deactivated. Had been waiting for me. All those years of good work. All those relationships I'd built. All those people I'd helped. They remembered. They vouched for me. They opened doors. Within 2 weeks I had 3 offers. Real offers. Better than my old job. Better pay. Better leadership. Better respect baked into the culture from the start. I accepted an offer from CloudShift Analytics. They were growing fast, building innovative products, and led by people who actually valued their employees. The compensation was 30% higher than TechFlow. The benefits were better. The culture interview had been honest and thoughtful instead of performative. But the best part was the message it sent. I wasn't damaged goods. I wasn't unhireable because I'd filed a dispute. I wasn't the problem. Brandon was. The system that had let him treat people that way was. My new boss, a woman named Priya Kumar, shook my hand during the offer meeting and said something I'd never heard at TechFlow. "We hire adults and treat them like adults. If someone isn't working out, we tell them directly and give them a chance to improve. We don't play games with people's livelihoods." I signed the offer letter that afternoon. My start date was January 7th. 2 weeks away. Time enough to rest. Time enough to reset. Time enough to watch what happened next at TechFlow from a safe distance. Because something was definitely happening. The building was shaking. The foundation was cracking. And I hadn't had to push anything over. I just told the truth and let gravity do the rest. Brandon resigned on December 20th. The announcement came through official channels. Brief. Corporate. Emotionless. Brandon Myers has decided to pursue other opportunities. We thank him for his service and wish him well in his future endeavors. No farewell email. No celebration. No thank you from leadership or praise for his contributions. Just a few sentences and then silence. The same silence he'd given me. The same erasure. The same casual dismissal. Except everyone knew why he was leaving. The committee had finished their review. They'd found what I knew they'd find. A pattern of terminations timed to avoid bonus payouts. Documentation showing intent. Proof of systematic cost-cutting at employee expense. Brandon hadn't been given a choice. He'd been told to leave quietly or face something louder and more damaging. So he left, just like I had. Except I'd left with my integrity intact, and he was leaving with everyone knowing exactly what he'd done. The bonus freeze was lifted 3 days later. Payments would go out as originally scheduled, including mine. The committee had ruled that my termination was improperly timed and inadequately documented. I was entitled to full compensation plus severance plus my bonus. I didn't celebrate. I just deposited the check and moved forward. January 7th. My first day at CloudShift Analytics. I woke up early, made coffee, got dressed in clothes I actually liked instead of clothes that felt like armor. I drove to an office that felt open and bright instead of tense and political. Priya met me in the lobby with a smile. Ready to build something great. Absolutely, I said. That afternoon I deleted my last file from TechFlow's shared drive. I'd kept access through an old API key that hadn't been deactivated. I didn't take anything. I didn't sabotage anything. I just removed my personal documentation and closed that chapter completely. No ceremony. No victory speech. No dramatic final statement. I'd frozen executive payouts. I'd exposed a pattern of exploitation. I'd cost Brandon his job and forced TechFlow to confront its own policies. But I hadn't done any of it through anger or revenge. I'd just told the truth. I'd filed one honest appeal about what happened to me. And the system, designed to protect people exactly like me, had done the rest. Now I was sitting in a new office with a new team with people who respected me. I was getting paid what I was worth. I was building something that mattered. And I knew exactly what I'd learned. You don't need revenge. You just need receipts. You don't need to burn anything down. You just need to tell the truth and let the fire spread itself.